Even though it's winter and getting down in the 20s at night, my dandelions are thriving. So I've been harvesting these for our dandelion bread. It's kind of strange because I didn't know that dandelions wouldn't freeze, and the heads of the dandelions are bigger and plusher than they were this summer. And there's a little patch where the sun still shines on them, and I've been harvesting them every day to make dandelion bread. My husband loves it. It is so much better than just even the gluten-free bread that I was making in the bread machine for him. And he says that it tastes a lot like honey wheat bread. So I've been working on getting some things done before I head to Texas, and I'm going to take you along with me today as I prepare to leave. I went out and checked the propane level. There's two gauges on a propane tank. One is for the pressure, and it has all of these controls over here on the side. And then one of them is the gauge of the percentage of the propane that you have in your tank. Propane here is now $1.73 a gallon. I remember when it was like 70 cents, 80 cents, and then I remember at one point it was pushing 90 cents and a dollar, and I remember my dad never wanting to buy it when it was in the 90s or if it was over a dollar. And he would get it early in the season and fill his tank to make sure that he didn't have to pay the higher winter prices. But I usually get the minimum amount put in, which is about 150 gallons, and that gets us through a couple of times a year. That'll get us through the entire year. We do have a propane cook stove. We do have a propane heater. And so these are things I primarily take care of in the household. I manage that. I monitor that. I call to get refills. And I wanted to make sure that that was all handled. So while I'm gone, my husband will have smooth sailing. I've also been looking around the house to take little bits of things that I know I can use up in my camper while I'm gone, so they won't go bad. I'm looking for packages of things that are maybe open or snacky type things or foods that just need used. These are things that I make a point of using up when I'm here at home, or I work them into our meal plan. If I leave them here when my husband is here, they will probably get overlooked and go bad before I get back home. So I've been making a list. I have a much more thorough list than I had last year. I sat down in my camper last year, made a very thorough list of everything in there in case things got taken out, so I could make sure that they got put back in. And then I have a certain amount of things that I can't load until the morning that we leave because it's so cold outside. It will freeze my plants, my lotions, different things like that. So there are a lot of things I can pre-pack, but then there's a lot of things I have to pack the morning of before we leave. So I have several lists going here, and I had to work Christmas into the mix as well. And I had to get all of this organized. And I didn't realize I was going to Texas until later in November this year. Last year, I planned in October. So I had more time to plan, more time to be ready. But after spending a winter down there and making this really thorough list, I think that I'm going to be okay. I try not to like get down there and then have to buy a lot of silly things that I forgot. Last year, I had to buy toenail clippers. There were just a few weird, dumb things like that that I forgot. And I was so mad at myself for forgetting them because I knew I had extra here at home, and yet I had to repurchase them when I got down there. But it was just a few small things. So my list is pretty thorough. I'm going around the house trying to use up little bits and pieces of different things that I can to incorporate into our meals before we go. So I'm going to show you what I made next to use up some leftover frozen turkey from the freezer, some rice that I didn't have room to put in my jars because all of the jars were filled, and some vegetables that we had floating around, as well as using up some of these huge celery plants that I have to pack and take with me. They have had babies. They're starting to turn into trees. I tried to separate the babies, but the babies seem to be in the same root system as the big plant. So it is just, they're just getting massive. And I looked up what the temperatures needed to be so that I can move my celery plants outside once I get down there. And so I'm going to have to make sure that the night temperatures will accommodate my celery once I get down there. And we may have to live with celery in the camper for a while. So let me show you what I made next to use up some of the foods we have before we head out. I made this rice-based turkey pot pie with some homemade turkey broth, turkey from Thanksgiving, and homegrown celery and onions and vegetables. Since I already spent one winter down in the Rio Grande Valley, I know that there's no Aldi down there, and I know there's only a Walmart and an HEB. So, as I could pick up some things that I knew would travel well, that I had a hard time getting good prices on last year, I stocked up. So, I will be taking some of my food from here, things like butter that I got on sale for $2.99 a pound, and I will be taking some of that with me. So that's another thing that I have to load the morning that we leave, is all of the cold food that's going to travel with us. I'm also going to take Fluff the cat with me again this year. He did really well in the camper last year. He loved the birds. He loved having the screen door open. He loved looking out the window at the neighbors. He's probably the most passive cat that we have. The other two, I seriously thought about taking one of them instead this year, but they are not as well mannered. They tend to get into trouble. And so I needed someone to go with me for companionship that would be well behaved. So you will see Fluff again in the videos this year. He's going to be keeping me company. My mother-in-law and father-in-law are already anxious for us to get down there. We will have about 24 hours before my husband has to fly back to Kansas. And I was so proud of him. He did get a credit card this last year that gives him travel miles for what he uses. And he started putting all of his expenses on there, paying it completely off so he has a zero balance. And he was able to get his flight back to Kansas for $5. I also know that there are things that I can get for better deals down there than I knew when I went the last time. I know about the flea market. I know about being able to get like peppers and some of the HEB diet cola and some of those things that I can purchase when I get down there rather than stocking all of that and taking it with me this time. So I feel like I'm packing lighter than I did the last time. And that is just because I have the knowledge of what I can purchase down there versus what I can't this time. Last time I was just going in blind. I really didn't know. And I didn't know the area and I didn't know what kind of deals I could get. I know there's not a lot of deals when I'm down there. HEB has a really small clearance area. And a lot of times it's just random weird things that I would never buy. So I really have to watch about what I purchase when I'm down there to be able to stay in my budget. I did not change my food budget for this year. It's $245 for the two of us, which means I will be staying on a food budget of $122.50 a month while I am in Texas. I've been making lists and notes ever since I got home in April of different things I can do to make my trip affordable. And one of the things is my phone doesn't work when I go across the border to Mexico, and they have bulk spices there that are in clear plastic containers that are in Spanish, and I don't know what they are. So I wrote down all the spices that we use, the equivalent Spanish names. So when I go across, I can buy some of those in bulk this time and bring those home with me. I'm always looking for these little small ways that I can save money to help fund my trip while I'm down there. This is an extravagant expense for me. I'm spending $1,400 in 3 months on lot rent. I'm spending money on electricity. I'm paying money for my internet to be hooked up and a monthly fee for my internet. Those are all extra expenses that I wouldn't normally have. So I factor that into my trip, and then I try to look at different ways like that that I can maybe recoup a little bit of that savings here and there for when I come back home. I have my budget paperwork set to go. I continue to track that and keep track of that very closely, even though I'm living in my camper. None of those daily things change. I track my spending, I track my income, I make sure everything is paid on time, and I sit down and I look at all of that stuff really, really closely because I want to make sure I can make it through the whole year, still be able to do this in the winter time and not negatively impact my income. Now, this last year, I did have to take out some money in December for Christmas gifts out of my savings and for my property taxes. But even though I did that, in the beginning, I had planned to give myself an allotment out of savings every single month once I retired. I didn't need to give myself an allotment. I just cut back where I could and I made it stretch and I made it last all of those other 11 months. So even though I ended up taking out about $2,500 out of my savings in December, that is the only thing that I took out the entire year. So when I first took that out, I felt pretty bad about it because I hadn't had to touch my savings yet. But then I remembered that originally I was going to give myself an allotment every single month so that I could stay home. And I have about 3 years until I can draw Social Security. And I had mapped that out where I thought I could make it at least a year, maybe longer, maybe the whole 4 years that originally was there. But now, since I only took that out in December, I'm sure I can make it the next 3 years. So I looked at it differently. At first, I was very disappointed. Then I was like, no, you're doing okay. You actually took out less than you thought you were going to. So you're still on schedule. I had a large round bale delivered for Brownie, and he still has hay left from last year as well, so he should be fine until I get home through the winter and he has the pond to drink out of. I've also already got tax information ready to take with me. I keep a lot of that noted throughout the year as far as what I spend on property taxes and expenses and different things so that I have all of that information with me. Last year, I did my taxes right out of the camper on my computer. This year, I definitely will be starting those again down there and trying to get those finished so that I don't have to do those when I get home. But these are things that I plan to take with me. So as you can see, even though I'm down there, I am living down there. I'm not just on an extended vacation, even though I do fun things while I'm there. Absolutely, I do. But I do keep doing a lot of the things that I would normally do at home. I'm just doing it in a tropical area that is warm and sunny and definitely nicer than it is here in Kansas in this cold farmhouse in the wintertime. So I'm really looking forward to getting down there. It is the coldest down there during January of any of the months of the year. So it will maybe still be cold when I get down there in January, but it'll be warmer than Kansas. And then February and March should warm up really nicely. So I'm looking forward to that. We're going to get ourselves loaded up and head that way. And the next video you see will be from Texas. I hope you've enjoyed this video on my preparations to go to Texas and some of the things that I do in planning to go down there for 3 months and be away from home. I hope to see you in the next video, and thanks for being here today.